Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to the Fallout 3 Wastelanders guide. Whether you're a new player, a returning player looking for tips, or simply curious about the games, this video is for you. Although this video is technically about Fallout 3, a lot of the information can be generalized and used for the future titles as well. Don't let the length of the video scare you off. You can select sections at will that you're interested in learning more about. Each segment will be labeled on the video progress bar for ease of access, so choose your own adventure. As a final note before we begin, this guide will only contain what I consider to be necessary information in order to understand and play the game comfortably. There will be no exploits, no maximum efficiency instructions, and a minimal amount of spoilers. With that, let's dig in. Fallout 3 is an action-adventure role-playing game in which you traverse a desolate wasteland that was the result of nuclear fallout. There were many bombs dropped between the United States and China, leading to this apocalypse. However, many survived and have learned to adapt to a cruel and lawless landscape. You play the role of the lone wanderer, an escapee of Vault 101. Throughout your time in the wasteland, you'll learn to survive and even thrive with a little help from yours truly. At the beginning of the game, you'll be required to choose your starting stats. Each stat has a bearing on some sort of ability within the game. For example, the strength stat gives a boost to your melee attack damage and carry weight. The attributes can also give unique dialogue options if you are proficient in them. For example, a high charisma character may be able to talk themselves out of trouble, or even extended quest segments if lucky. Before I give more information on what these all do, please remember not to set any of them to 10. The game will provide opportunities through which you can gain extra attribute points. You will more than likely come across them naturally, and thus, you don't want to max any of these out. Let's outline what each of these does so that you can better decide what fits your playstyle. Strength modifies your melee skill, melee damage, and carry weight. If you are playing a character that runs headfirst into battle with a baseball bat, this is your attribute. I would also advise putting at least 1 point into it simply for the additional carry weight, which we will discuss the benefits of later. Perception affects your talent with explosive traps and weapons, lockpicking, which is used to break into loot boxes and doors, and finally, your skill with energy weapons. Energy weapons are those which use lasers and plasma. If that sounds like your preferred weapon choice, this is a good attribute for you. Endurance will change your total health points, proficiency with big guns such as rockets and miniguns, your fist-to-fist damage, and of course, your resistance to radiation and poison. This attribute is pretty versatile. It is worth noting, however, that there are armors that can provide defense and shielding against those conditions, so I typically do not put more than 1 point here if used. Charisma concerns your ability to sway opinions through word, as well as your ability to barter and get better deals with salespeople. When people like you, things do become a little easier in the wasteland. Intelligence provides a higher amount of skill points to attribute per level, as well as a boost in skills of medicine, repair, and science. Medicine is used to heal yourself. Repair is used to fix weapon and armor condition. Science is used to hack terminals. All of these will be explained in better detail within the next section. This is one of my favorite attributes. Agility raises the amount of action points for VATS, which we will discuss in the combat section. If you're new to the idea of using a gun in a video game, or just want a backup option in a frantic situation, this is a good choice for you. VATS is basically an aim assist. Also, this attribute gives boosts to sneaking and small weapons, which is good for the player that likes to slink through shadows. Finally, we have luck. This attribute has a small effect on every skill as well as critical hit chance and random encounters throughout the wasteland. It is usually worth putting at least 1 point into. Overall, it's important to keep in mind that none of these choices will have a major restrictive impact on your playstyle. Should you start with small guns and end up wanting to use rockets, you just need to change what skills you put points into on each level. Speaking of skills, let's talk about those. There are 13 skills which max out at 100. Each of these has a direct bearing on actions related to said skill. When you level up, you'll be asked to put points into skills as you wish. Keep in mind that, in a regular playthrough, it is possible to hit 100 in all of them. You can put points in yourself, find books which give bonuses, etc. Hence, you should initially prioritize things you find need of. For me, these include science, small guns, and lockpick. I believe science and lockpick to be integral to every playthrough, and will reiterate this information as we move along. So let's get started. The barter skill affects your talent of getting better sale and purchase prices in the shops. It is governed by your charisma stat. As there are many ways of making money in the game, I typically furnish this last. I would not recommend putting points into it early on. Next is big guns. This affects your damage and aim with large weapons, such as rocket launchers, miniguns, etc. If you plan on making those weapons your primary armament, then this is a good skill to boost. It also pairs well with a high strength and endurance stat, as these weapons are typically heavy, filling out your inventory space. Energy weapons concern pistols, rifles, and mines that use plasma or laser technology. This skill is pretty fun and allows the use of cool weaponry. That said, I find that these weapons don't tend to appear until around mid-game or so, at least spawning with enemies as a regular source of them. I don't tend to put points in this skill until I have another weapon skill maxed. Explosives concern the damage output of mines and grenades. A few well-placed mines can save you from an expensive fate. Coupled with one of the crafted weapons in the game, the bottle cap mine, a high explosive skill can insta-kill a problematic target. At a minimum, I would say this needs to be at least at 25. We'll discuss why a little later on. Next is lockpick, which is exactly what it sounds like. Much of the loot in the game, as well as cool hidden areas, is locked behind a minigame. Some locks cannot even be attempted if your skill is too low. I recommend putting a few points into this each level, that way you can access this loot for the majority of your playthrough. It's one of my first max skills. Next is medicine. I find that a good stat of around 60 or so is all you really need. If you play your cards right, you'll end up with more than enough stim packs, Nuka-Colas, etc. to keep yourself in check. Melee weapons are those which require up-close combat. These include bats, knives, skewers, pool cues, etc. This also pairs well with the strength stat, as that will boost your damage. I've never done a melee playthrough, and so I typically leave this for last, but if that is the style of game you want, bring this boy up to 100. Repair is incredibly important for all players. As you journey through the wasteland, taking potshots from raiders, and being smacked across the head by mutants, you'll find your equipment starts to break down. Weapons and armor will lose condition, as seen in the Pip-Boy menu, and need to be repaired. The higher your skill, the higher quality you will be able to bring these weapons to. To repair your weapons and armor, you will need to find duplicates dropped from enemies, or pay an NPC to fix them for you. If doing it yourself, you'll need to get these copies, then, in your inventory, press R or Y, I believe, which will open the option to repair. You will generally repair one gun with others of lesser quality, consuming them in the process. I typically keep extra copies of my favorite weapon types at my home in Megaton, in order to repair when necessary. It's imperative that you get this skill to 100. Science is a skill very much like lockpick. In fact, some of their effects have considerable overlap. Science determines your ability to hack terminals, a tutorial of which I will give in just a moment. By hacking terminals, you can control or offline nearby robots or turrets, unlock doors and safes, etc. This is another skill I boost to 100 early on. Hacking in Fallout is a lot easier than people think. Here, I'll be giving you a few tricks that will have you succeeding in one try every time. You can begin by choosing any word from the given list. A number will show how many letters from that word are in the correct place. For example, in the word reservoir, 2 of the letters are in the correct spot. Perhaps it could be the first R and or the V in slot 6 of 9. Typically, you would choose another word matching your guess to see if it works. This is what you should do instead. Clicking a set of parentheses, brackets, or braces will remove one of the incorrect words from the list. If you make a mistake, you can click a set of angle brackets to replenish an attempt slot. Once you have used all of the sets of enclosing brackets, you will usually end up with a single option left. This, of course, is the correct answer. Before I realized this, I always tried 3 options, hoped for luck, and reset if those were all wrong. Now I don't have to, and neither do you. The small gun skill concerns things like pistols and rifles, including the sniper rifle. This will affect the aiming sway as well as the damage output. As this is my preferred method of play, I always max this early on. Sneak is a skill that allows you to move undetected. This is great if you're playing a thief or a sniper, as it allows you to have the element of surprise. As I find I do well without it, I usually make it one of the last to level. Speech is your ability to lie or sway others through dialogue in order to get your way. It can certainly save you time, allowing you to sometimes skip segments of questlines. As I don't want to skip game content, I typically keep this skill around 60 or so, using it only when necessary. Unarmed defines your skill at hand-to-hand combat. The damage is based upon your endurance and would make for a really funny playthrough. That said, I've never used it before. As mentioned before, do not stress about what you put points into first. You'll have the option to flesh out other skills later on in your playthrough, as well as find other means of raising those points. Now, to the perk system. Every time you level, you'll be asked to select a perk option from the list. This will permanently affect your playthrough, but typically in positive ways. Here, I will give quick descriptions of each perk, as well as give my opinion on whether or not it's worth using. If you picked one of the quote-unquote wasted perks, fear not. It's not a game ender by any means. Some also require certain attribute levels which may or may not require using the intense training perk to achieve. Their prerequisites will be on screen. To start, we have Black Widow / Lady Killer. These are dependent upon your chosen sex at the start of the game. It offers a 10% damage bonus to members of the opposite sex, as well as unique dialogue options. This benefits female characters most, since male characters are found more often. Daddy's Boy / Girl adds a few points to science and medicine skills. This perk is completely unnecessary, and I suggest it never be taken. Skill points are very easy to come by naturally. Gun Nut, Little Leaguer, and Thief are similarly pointless. Swift Learner seems beneficial at first, but is actually a wasted perk. Through natural gameplay, you will easily earn enough XP to level consistently. I recommend against it. Intense training adds a single point to one of your stats. I rarely use this, and if I do, it's just for more strength and carry weight. Child at heart is a subjective choice. It adds unique dialogue options and can be interesting or even beneficial in certain cases, one of which is related to the main story. Comprehension adds an extra skill point whenever you find a book that heightens a skill. This is mildly useful early game, but mostly unnecessary. Educated is a great perk. Even taken once, it will allow you to put more points into your skills earlier in the game. It starts with a permanent bonus of 3 more points per level up, but you can take the perk multiple times if you feel it's necessary. I would recommend taking at least 1 level of this perk. Bloody Mess turns every enemy into a grotesque piñata and adds 5% damage to all weapons. This can benefit any player. Entomologist is very specific but useful, giving a 50% bonus to damage against mutated insects in the Wasteland. This is great for late game as there are incredibly strong scorpions that become bullet sponges if you lack the necessary firepower. Scoundrel and Iron Fist are more skill boosters and should be avoided as they are unnecessary. Lead Belly removes 50% of radiation from polluted drinking sources. With the amount of Radaway, stim packs, and other sources of HP, drinking from these polluted sources is often unnecessary, so too is the perk. Toughness adds 10% to your damage resistance overall, which I believe is a good choice. Fortune Finder adds many more caps to lootable containers, meaning you find money much more often. It's a good perk, if a little unnecessary. There's really no harm in taking it. Gunslinger adds 25% accuracy in VATS if you're using a single-handed weapon, such as a pistol. This is aimed toward a particular playstyle and is great if you're a pistol user. It's also great if you find yourself having difficulties aiming. Demolition Expert adds 20% damage to your explosive weapons. If you're doing a playthrough centered around that style, you should take the perk. Commando adds 25% accuracy in VATS, which is great if you plan on using rifles. Rad Resistance adds 25% resistance to radiation. It is unnecessary as there are armors and such that will do that for you. Scrounger is similar to Fortune Finder but for ammo. You'll find more ammo in containers. This is a great perk and one I always take. Size Matters adds skill points to big guns, but it's really unnecessary. Strong Back is great and adds 50 pounds to your carry weight. I believe this to be essential. Impartial Mediation adds 30 points to your speech skill, but requires you to have neutral karma. This is rare, as players typically do a good or evil playthrough, and karma can sometimes be difficult to maintain, meaning that the perk may only function occasionally. I avoid this one. Animal Friend is awesome. Taking the first level makes animals neutral to you. This includes dogs, mole rats, yaoguai, etc. If you take one more level, they'll come to your aid in battle. I usually take at least the first level. Finesse adds 5% to your critical hit chance. It could be useful at times, but it's kind of a low addition. I typically skip it. Mr. Sandman allows you to instantly kill NPCs and gain bonus experience. I rarely come across sleeping NPCs in my playthroughs, and so I typically don't use it. Mysterious Stranger is a neat perk. Randomly in VATS, the Mysterious Stranger will come and finish off a target for you. Who they are, no one knows, though some have theorized. This can actually be very beneficial against difficult enemies. Nerd Rage adds 50% damage resistance and 50% strength whenever your health is below 20%. This can come in handy in a pinch and wouldn't hurt to take on. Here and Now is perhaps the worst perk in the list. It gives you a level instantly, but is basically throwing away a perk slot. I recommend against this. Levels come easily enough, and assuming you have the Broken Steel DLC, the cap is only 30, so you'll get there in no time. Plus, if you level without getting another perk, you may find yourself challenged by enemies that you don't have the means to combat. Pyromaniac adds 50% damage to fire-based weapons like the Flamer. This choice is style-focused. Cannibal is an odd one. You can eat corpses in order to gain 25 health, but you lose 1 point of karma each time. This is more of a roleplay perk. I never take it, but you can if you would like to join a certain family. Life Giver is a great no negatives perk. It gives you 30 extra health. Robotics Expert adds 25% damage to robots, as well as the ability to sneak up and shut them off, which works from the front sometimes as well. I always take this. Sniper is basically how it sounds. It adds 25% accuracy when aiming at the target's head in VATS. This is another one I always take. Silent Running adds 10 points to sneak. It also adds speed, and your armor rate will no longer affect your ability to remain hidden. This is good for sneaky characters. Fast Metabolism lets you get the most out of stim packs, adding another 20 health when used. I never really need this as I find myself with stim packs to spare. Lawbringer is another roleplay focused skill. When you kill evil enemies, they will drop fingers. You take the fingers to a certain NPC and are rewarded with caps and good karma. Contract Killer is the opposite. You kill good people, find ears, and then sell them to someone else for bad karma. Chemist makes chems last twice as long. This can be a good or bad thing depending on your playstyle in combat. Chems will be discussed in that section, along with VATS. Cyborg adds 10 points to the energy weapon skill, as well as a 10% radiation, poison, and damage resistance. This is a great versatile perk, however, skill points come easily, and resistance to these types of damage can be achieved through other means. I think it's a good perk, but I would recommend it sooner than later. Light Step is a great perk for those who forget about mines and traps. With this, you'll never set them off, regardless of if you step directly on top of them. If you don't have the perk, you can still disarm most traps by simply pressing the activation button on them before they're set off. Master Trader makes items cost 25% less, but as someone who ends up with lots of caps, I never need this. Adamantium Skeleton reduces damage taken to your limbs by 50%. This is a fantastic perk for all players to take. Tag adds another skill which you can instantly boost by 15 points. As we've covered, this is unnecessary. Better Criticals adds 50% more damage to your critical hits. This is not a bad perk for anyone, and I would recommend it. Action Boy / Action Girl is good for anyone who uses VATS often. It adds 25 action points, allowing you to take more shots. Chem Resistant makes you less likely to become addicted to chems. If you use them, you may want this perk initially. However, after you get the Megaton House, which we'll describe later, this perk becomes unnecessary. Infiltrator and Computer Whiz are both completely useless. Do not take them. They simply allow you to reattempt lockpicking or hacking if you try and force them, failing along the way. Since you now know how to easily hack terminals, you won't need to bother. If you haven't seen that segment, go back and watch the skills section. As for the lockpicking, you should never force a lock unless it says 100% chance of success. Concentrated Fire adds 5% accuracy in VATS for every shot fired. It's a good perk. Paralyzing Palm is good for hand-to-hand players. It adds a 30% chance of paralysis whenever you punch an enemy. Solar Powered adds 2 points to the strength attribute, which is huge, as well as heals you by 1 health point per second. The catch is that you have to be outside during the day for this to take effect. It's not a bad perk by any means, and I often take it. Ninja adds a 15% critical hit chance with melee weapons or hand-to-hand combat. You also get a 25% bonus to sneak attack critical hit damage, which is great for any player. Grim Reaper's Sprint is insane. If you kill an enemy while in VATS, your AP is refilled immediately, and you can attack again. Explorer reveals all locations on the map. I find it more enjoyable to happen upon them or find them with the compass, but to each their own. With the Broken Steel DLC, there are 14 more perks. These include the following. Deep Sleep adds the Well Rested effect, which adds 10% to your XP gain for 8 in-game hours. This rarely procs because you won't often find yourself sleeping. The addition to XP is also unnecessary. The Puppies perk allows Dogmeat to respawn outside Vault 101 if he dies, which is very rare. Still, I always take this just in case. Quantum Chemist is pretty funny. For every 10 Nuka-Cola bottles you collect, it will transform them into a Nuka-Cola Quantum, which can be used in certain crafting recipes. I tend to take this as I don't often need the Nuka-Colas to heal with. Devil's Highway, Escalator to Heaven, and Karmic Rebalance all affect your karma in the ways you might expect. They're often completely unnecessary unless you end up wanting to change your mind at the near end of your playthrough, but I never do. No Weaknesses is decent and raises all attributes to 5 at minimum. However, if you're planning on taking the Almost Perfect perk, this will be a complete waste. Almost Perfect raises all of your attributes to 9, but can only be taken at your very last level up. This is one I typically use, but it does take a bit of planning to guarantee that you aren't wasting your other choices before getting here. If you want to use this, it is also recommended that you don't use No Weaknesses. Rad Tolerance removes the poisoning effects of minor sickness. This is unnecessary. Warmonger gives you access to the maximum level of each crafted weapon schematic in the game. This is great if you did not acquire them through the other means, but I find it much more fun to do so. Also, you save a perk slot if you don't take this and just do it manually. Nerves of Steel basically heals your action points by 1 per second. I never use this. Party Girl / Party Boy removes the possibility of having an alcohol addiction. I never find alcohol to be useful enough unless in charisma check situations, so I never take this. Again, the House and Megaton helps with addictions, which we'll talk about in a little while. Rad Absorption removes a rad every second. I would not take this. You find enough rad away to remove the need. Nuclear Anomaly is the final regular perk you can choose. When your health is 20 or less, the area around you will explode like a nuclear bomb. However, friends nearby will also be hurt, so keep it in mind. This is totally optional. Could be cool for an evil playthrough, or one in which you don't use companions. There are other perks in the game, but so as to avoid spoilers, I won't list them here. Now we will talk about the combat experience of the game. The quick summary of this is, pick a favorite few weapons, put skill points in accordingly, and keep up with repairs. For example, I typically run with small weapons. I enjoy the combat shotgun, sniper rifle, and Lincoln's repeater. As such, I max out my small weapon skill. I also grab every extra combat shotgun and sniper I can find and use them to repair my gear. The main types of weaponry in this game are small guns, big guns, energy weapons, and explosives. There are good options within all categories, and they each play differently. Mines are typically placed in doorways or other areas you expect enemies to come through. Guns are for active combat scenarios. Rockets are for big stuff, etc. At least this is how I play. A deciding factor for these styles that we have not discussed yet is the difficulty of the game. At any point, you can go to gameplay options and change the difficulty. The higher it is, the harder enemies will be in combat, and the XP gain will actually be higher as a result. As you move through the game and get comfortable, you may find it too easy. Upping the difficulty adds a challenge and also boasts higher rewards, allowing you to get those perks faster than you would have before. In order to use certain weapons, you need the correct type of ammo. Below each weapon, if it requires anything, there will be a listed ammo type. Be aware that the 5.56mm ammo type is missing the period sometimes when looking at the Pip-Boy. Something else you may want in battle are chems. These are different drugs that can boost your combat abilities, such as adding damage or even action points with which to use VATS. The downside is that you'll eventually become addicted to the drugs and suffer withdrawals as a result. You can heal this issue at a doctor or by another, better method we will discuss in the next section. VATS, which we have mentioned many times in the previous sections, will be explained here. VATS stands for the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System. By hitting the VATS button, time will freeze or slow depending on the game, and allow more precise targeting of enemies. The number shown will express your chance of hitting that limb, and the bar above it will show its health. If you bring that bar to the minimum, it will cause that limb to be crippled, causing your enemy major problems. When using VATS, you select a body part and confirm that you want to hit it. Each time you do this will consume action points which take time to recover. VATS is especially useful against strong enemies or groups of enemies. Some other important things to consider during combat are your health and armor. When taking damage, your overall health count will go down, and your limbs may take damage or even break, leaving you crippled and causing problems with your speed, vision, or aim dependent on the affected part of the body. You can directly heal limbs with stim packs in the characters section of the Pip-Boy. Many items can be used to heal, including stim packs, water, Nuka-Cola, and food as a last resort. Radiation can be removed through Radaway. Health and radiation resistance can also be heightened by certain chems. Another way to reduce the damage to yourself is by wearing armor. Each piece of armor has a damage resistance rating, the higher the better. In fact, wearing power armor is one of the best ways to mitigate incoming damage. We'll discuss a quick and non-exploitative way to get early power armor a little further on. As mentioned before, your weapons and armor both have conditions. If you do not keep up with repairs, they can diminish in quality or even break completely. Weapons with low condition will jam and misfire, becoming really annoying in firefight scenarios. Losing a piece of armor could be the final straw if a missile is coming your way. Be sure to always keep your items repaired by either consuming duplicates you scavenge or by paying an NPC to take care of it. Some final notes about combat include the following. When traveling in the Wasteland, use your third-person view to have better coverage of potential dangers. When possible, hide behind cover to prevent taking shots from difficult enemies. And finally, if you find yourself nearing a conflict that is beyond your current capability, or you simply don't want to deal with it, there is no harm in simply booking it. The next segment concerns the player home in Megaton. Right off the bat, I want to list some of the major positives. Storage space, healing from sickness and addiction, the crafting table, Wadsworth.
The two cannibals are eating a clown. One cannibal turns to the other and asks, "Does this taste funny to you?"
And storage space again. The player house is situated in Megaton, the first major settlement you'll come across in your travels. This town is centered around an undetonated bomb. You have many choices regarding what to do with it. What you need to do is speak with Lucas Sims, the mayor and sheriff. If you have an explosive skill of 25 or higher, you can disarm it, and Sims will give you a key to the player home. Here you can store excess weapon duplicates, crafting materials, etc. I typically pick one locker for weapons and armor, and the other for everything else. Then I use the fridge to store all my items I plan to sell. The crafting table can be used to produce weapons based upon acquired schematics. These include all sorts of cool things like the Deathclaw Gauntlet, the Bottle Cap Mine, the Shish Kebab, and more. I may make a video based upon all of the custom weapons in the future if people would like to see it. I also mentioned healing. There's a healing table which will fully heal you, your limbs, and remove all radiation from you. A chemistry set will remove your addiction and even create random chems once a day. There's also a jukebox you can buy, as well as a Nuka-Cola fridge which converts all Nuka-Colas into ice-cold varieties, which raise their healing effectiveness. These last few amenities do not come with the house, however. You will need to purchase them from Moira Brown at the shop in town. Then they will automatically appear in your new home. How do you get the money to buy these expensive enhancements exactly? Well, let's jump into the next section. Making money in Fallout 3 is a lot easier than I remember it being. First off, here's some things you always want to pick up no matter what. Pre-war books, pre-war money, Radaway, stim packs, mentats, ammo, cigarette packs, and scrap metal, among others. Pre-war money, Radaway, Stimpaks, etc. are all weightless items, meaning you can have an unlimited amount in your inventory and it will not impact your movement. As for the pre-war books and scrap metal, these objects can be sold to certain NPCs and are quite lucrative. The scrap metal sells for 15 bottle caps, which is the common currency of the Wasteland, as well as some XP to the man in Megaton running the waterworks. The pre-war books sell for 100 caps apiece to a scribe at a library, the location of which I won't reveal due to spoilers. If you have the Lawbringer or Contract Killer perks, those offer extra avenues for cap generation. By far the best way to make money is through gathering and selling loot. I always grab things that are worth 10 times their weight in caps. For example, a beer typically weighs 1 pound and sells for 10 caps. This is something I will hold on to as I make my way back to town, unless I find something better. The same can be said for packs and cartons of cigarettes, which have an even better weight to money ratio. Since they are no longer industrially produced, addicted denizens of the wasteland will pay a pretty cap for them. When looting, remember to clear the room of enemies before doing so. If there are surprise enemies, it could make you forget where a piece of loot was. If they throw a grenade, it could scatter rare items across the floor, allowing them to blend in with the detritus. Check every container there is. You never know what you might find in them. If you find yourself slowing down after grabbing a bunch of items, it is usually because you have surpassed your maximum carry weight. To remedy this, you can start repairing items in your inventory. This will raise their effectiveness and value while also allowing you to pick up more objects. If you find you really want all the things you have, you can always do the following. Walk your slow character to the front door of the location you are in, or near the fast travel point if you're outdoors, and simply drop your excess weight in a pile. You can then go sell things in Megaton and return for what you had to leave behind. They'll remain long enough for you to do so. You won't be able to fast travel with a full inventory, so this is the best method for dealing with the issue. Now, back to making money. If you're selling weapons and armor, it's best to sell them at high repair quality. For example, selling 3 crappy quality rifles is worse than combining them and selling them as a single weapon. You can also sell ammo for weapons you never plan on using, but this is often unnecessary. Sometimes when you sell many items, you may find that your intended sale exceeds the cap limit of the vendor. I used to sell, wait for 3 days, then sell again, and you can definitely do that. However, there's a much better way to go about it, and one that will allow you to sell more per transaction. In the game, you will undoubtedly need ammo and stimpaks, as well as some crafting materials in the miscellaneous options menu. So let's use Moira's shop as an example. Say I have an inventory so full it's weighing me down completely. The first thing I will do is pay her to repair any weapons I don't have the means to, such as a sniper if I don't have any extras on hand. That money will go into her inventory, adding to that which she can use to barter. Then I will sell a bunch of stuff until it nears her cap limit. At that point, I'll check her ammo options and buy stimpaks until it breaks even, then sell a few more things to hit the max cap limit for the day. Now I know I said there would be no min-maxing, but I do find this to be the most effective means of bartering, and one which will provide you with tons of ammo, stimpaks, and caps. Continue your adventure, load up on valuables, sell with this method, and profit. Here are a few other things that can aid you in your journey across the wasteland. First off, everyone needs a furry friend. I do not consider this to be spoilers, as there is no real story involved, but Dogmeat can be found here at the junkyard. If you help him battle some enemies, he'll join you as a worthy companion for basically your entire playthrough. He takes very little damage and gains a lot of health each time you level. Don't forget to get the puppies perk if you plan on having him, just in case. Next, let's look into getting some power armor a little earlier than usual. Note that this is not an exploit and is an optional method of obtaining the training required to utilize power armor. If you have the Operation Anchorage DLC, packaged with the Game of the Year edition, you can find this radio signal asking for help. It will repeat, "This is Defender Moral. Any outcasts listening on this frequency, report to Sector 7B. This outcast radio signal is in range as soon as you leave the vault if I remember right. If you go to this location, you will engage in a very cool, decent-sized questline that will reward you with the ability to wear power armor, among other things. Just make sure to watch your back. As a final tip, one may ask about questing and where to start. I think a fine way to start is by taking on Moira's Wasteland Survival Guide questline. It'll teach you some of the ropes, show you some really cool locations, and reward you well for the journey. Beyond that, talk to anyone and everyone. You never know who needs help out there, and they usually don't expect it for free. Next up, we should briefly discuss DLC content. These will be described with minimal spoilers. These include 5 add-ons which you will most likely have, assuming you're in possession of the Game of the Year edition. Operation Anchorage concerns a simulation in which you take part as a United States soldier. The Pit is a Raider-themed DLC hosted in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Broken Steel raises the level cap from 20 to 30 and adds more content post-main quest. Point Lookout takes place in swampy Maryland and opens a large playable space. Finally, Mothership Zeta is exactly as it sounds, an alien spaceship that the player gets to explore. Most of these DLCs are started by listening to a radio signal, and these will be accessible from the first time you exit the vault. The most frequently asked question about DLC is what order to play them in. The only DLC that really requires a sequential decision is Broken Steel, which will take place after you complete the main quest. As mentioned in an earlier section, I prefer to do Operation Anchorage fairly early so I can enjoy the spoils for a long duration. As for the others, I usually do the Pit, Point Lookout, and then Mothership Zeta. However, you can do all of these in whichever order you want. Here are some random tips I could not decide where to place. Number 1, you can hotkey your items for easier access. On controller, you hold a bumper and use the analog stick to pick a direction. After, you can simply press that direction on the D-pad to swap to that weapon. You can also do this with stimpaks, which I usually place on the up direction. This will allow you to heal during combat, which is a big deal. Number 2, you can put your gun away by holding the same button used to ready it, such as the X button on an Xbox controller. Number 3, you can hold your Pip-Boy menu button to turn on a flashlight. This will help immensely in dark locations, but will make you easier to detect. And number 4, the goat at the beginning of the game is there for story purposes, but is ultimately meaningless, as you can choose your tag skills by suggesting you don't like the results. I hope this guide has helped you to understand a bit more of how to play Fallout 3 in a comfortable way. Always remember that these suggestions are just that, suggestions. You don't have to play any certain way, and there are a few choices regarding skills and such that will bar you from content. My final tips are to save often, don't feed the Yagwai, and to like and subscribe for more video game content such as this. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.